Anybody else in here grew up in the deep south beside me?
Well, part of it, till I was 8 years old.
From Mississippi?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you remember a few things.
I got out early myself. Amen.
You had to have lived in the South to really understand how barbaric that place was. I was born in a state that was considered the leader of the southern states. I think the first 4 presidents came from that state, Virginia. Born in Petersburg, Virginia. Land of Washington, Jefferson, Lee, a whole lot of literally the founders of this republic as we know it. Growing up in that atmosphere, we had to ride on segregated buses, and when you got on the bus, everything was segregated. You got on the bus, they had separate sections for black and white people. The blacks sat in the back, the whites up front. And if you ran out of seats for white people, the blacks had to get up, and give up their seats to the white people. The bus filled up with white people. All the blacks were standing up. You might get put off the bus. This is how bad it was. When you went into stores, quite often you could not try on clothes. If you did, you had to buy whether it fit or not. If a black person went in a store and brought a hat, you better make sure it fit before you put it on. Once you touch a black body, that was it. You know what? Nobody else would buy it. I'm saying this is how ridiculous and how barbaric it was. When black folks were traveling, you know, in interstate travel, you had to pack your lunch for a long trip because you could not stop at restaurants, motels, or places of that nature just for to relax, or you could stay overnight. That's how it was. Almost no motels or hotels on the interstate highways of the South and many other parts of the United States would accept black people as customers. I don't care how wealthy you was, how much money you had, how well educated you was, whether you graduated from Harvard, Yale, Oxford, or Cambridge, Morehouse. It didn't matter. Just laying the foundation of what the people of Montgomery, Alabama was dealing with. Within all of that, you know, that atmosphere, people always had the fighting spirit. There was always something. And there were always people planning, how can we make things better? How can we change this system? How can we crack this horrible system? The NAACP organization like that had been active in the South for many years. There were other organizations, but like in Montgomery, perhaps the most active outside of the churches were the NAACP. And as I say, a brother by the name of E.D. Nixon, who had been chairman of the NAACP in Montgomery, and he had held other positions. Him, another lawyer, white lawyer, last name was Burke, and along with many others, they were trying to figure out how do we challenge the system. You know, here in Birmingham and Alabama, they knew. After looking at several options, they decided that going after the city buses would probably be a good option. Most of our people rode the buses. Without their patronage, the bus company would go out of business. And it would just bring light on the whole situation in Montgomery. E.D. Nixon, the local leaders were looking for someone maybe to test that system, someone who was safe. When the stuff hit the fan, Dr. King had not been in town that long. A little over a year at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Everyone knows Rosa Parks, but there were others who had been arrested in Montgomery for challenging that system. More than we can count. Now, there was a young lady by the name of Claudette Cole. I don't know whether y'all ever heard of her.
Was she the young girl or teenager?
Yes, I met her. I picked her up not a few years ago when she was living in the Bronx. And I took her to WBAI Radio to be interviewed by Bernard White. And she had some very insightful things to say. But the point is that Claudette Culver challenged that system about a little over 6 months before Rosa Parks did.
Wow.
She was arrested. She was 15 years old. She was arrested, put through the system, and the leaders in Birmingham at first thought that she might be a good test case, just to show you how sensitive this issue was down there. Unfortunately, Claudette Culver, I think, was 6 months pregnant and had some other problems where they had a nice, beautiful woman there. But if they had used her as a test case, the whites in power would have jumped all over her.
Sure.
She's an unwed mother, she's irresponsible, da 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 da. Now, so they quietly decided not to use Claudette Cole. But in talking with her, she has a lot to say and give you a lot of insight into what was going on in Montgomery. And Montgomery was a small enough town where everybody knew each other. That's the way many southern towns are. And Claudette Culver grew up with Rosa Parks. The NAACP chairman, E.D. Nixon, also had known Rosa Parks, all her life. Montgomery, the South, the families tend to be close. Unknown to most people, and maybe most people nowadays don't know, is that it was no accident that Rosa Parks took the stand that she did. It did not happen in a vacuum. Very quietly, Rosa Parks and some other ones had been attending a school that dealt with civil disobedience, pacifism, things of that nature, tell you how to challenge the system.
Right.
It was called the Highlands Folk School in the mountains of Tennessee. Rosa Parks went to that school. Dr. King eventually went there, and Young was even offered a job teaching her. This is facts and fearlessness. Because they also taught classes in citizenship, what are your rights as a citizen and how do you pursue those rights. Rosa Parks had attended the Highland.
Highland?
Yeah.
Called?
Yeah, the Highlander.
Highlander.
The Highlander folk school. Some call it the Highlander Institute. Now, I wish we had more places like that. The Highlander Folk School was really a school for training activists. The Highlander Folk School was founded, believe it or not, in 1932. It had been around for a while. Its goal primarily in its formative years was training labor leaders and labor activists how to pursue your rights, how to fight against the powers that be, for little people, for little people. And so we owe institutions like that, a great deal. And originally, interesting enough, what became known as the Highlander Institute or the Highlander Folk School, I then they use it like, call it folk school, just kind of cover what their real actions were. But you know, interesting enough, the Highlander Institute, in its early stage, was actually started in the Sea Islands of South Carolina.
See out.
Yes. And then somehow he eventually wind up, in Tennessee, maybe because the location here was kind of in an isolated area where you can do what you have to do without a whole lot of scrutiny. But it's been organizations like that and institutions like that we owe so much to. But just laying the foundation for what took place in Montgomery, you have to understand all of those forces at work. So when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, she had already been trained for that. She was actually waiting for the opportunity. And she had all of the right credentials, where the power structure couldn't come down on her in any kind of way. Her husband was kind of an activist, Raymond Parks. She was active in the NAACP, Rosa Parks. And she was squeaky clean. No warrants, no arrests. If it had been me, I'd been in serious trouble. But Rosa was squeaky clean. So the white folks downtown couldn't, look at her character. You got all these rutlers and warrants. You know what I mean? You're on welfare. You know how they used to do us. After Rosa was arrested, E.D. Nixon, the NAACP chairman, this white lawyer, Mr. Burr, when he got her out. And eventually they called for a boycott of city buses that was their plan anyway. Stuff is interesting. How the enemy can sometimes wind up working for you without even knowing.
All right.
Things was so rough in Montgomery that it was hard for a black person to get any kind of decent job. Most of us was working in service industries. Most of the women, a lot of them worked as domestics in white families, whatever, but as the word for the boycott went out, it went out kind of slowly, but it went out. People were getting pissed. But what really made the word spread was a black maid, a housekeeper. She showed the flyer announcing the boycott to the white family she was working with, the boss. And well-off, prominent white family in Montgomery. And as it turned out, the man in this house, this particular white man, I don't know his name, was a very popular radio announcer. Very popular radio announcer. He took the flyer like, what are these ends up to? They're trying to disrupt our city. He went on the air and blasted it. Told the Negroes, none of y'all pay that no mind. Y'all continue to ride the buses. Not realizing that he just made the Negroes mad. And he had to spread the word. A lot of them hadn't even heard about it. A lot of blacks even hadn't even heard about it. And my man went on the radio telling us not to come. Leave them other radical Negroes alone. Now people saw it and this thing, the word spread like wildfire in the black community. And on the first day of the boycott, nobody was riding the buses. Certainly, nobody black.
All right.
And it went on for over a year. I think about 380 days.
381.
Yeah, 381 days that went on. But a lot of things were taking place in Montgomery in the process. And the reason why the case in Montgomery needs to be studied